Hello. Don't forget to like and subscribe before starting the video. Who is Andrew Johnson? Andrew Johnson was the 17th President of the United States, who served from 1865 to 1869. He became president after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and was tasked with the difficult challenge of leading the country through the tumultuous period of Reconstruction after the Civil War. While Johnson is often remembered as the first president to be impeached by the House of Representatives, there is much more to his story than just this dramatic event. Throughout his presidency, Johnson faced numerous challenges and controversies, including his contentious relationship with Congress, his views on race and slavery, and his mixed record on civil rights. In this video, we will delve deeper into the life and legacy of Andrew Johnson, exploring his background, his impeachment, and his lasting impact on American history. By the end of this video, you will have a greater understanding of this complex and controversial president and his place in the pantheon of American leaders. Andrew Johnson was born in poverty in Raleigh, North Carolina, in 1808. He grew up in difficult circumstances and was largely self-taught. As a young man, Johnson apprenticed as a tailor and eventually moved to Tennessee, where he became involved in local politics. Johnson's political career began in earnest in the 1840s when he was elected to the Tennessee state legislature. He went on to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, where he was known for his fiery speeches and his advocacy for the common man. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Johnson was the only senator from a seceding state who remained loyal to the Union. He was appointed military governor of Tennessee and was later chosen by Lincoln to be his running mate in the 1864 presidential election. Johnson's views on race and slavery were complex and often contradictory. While he opposed secession and supported the Union cause, he also insisted on preserving white supremacy and opposed efforts to grant equal rights to African Americans. As president, Johnson came into conflict with Congress over his lenient policies towards former Confederates and his opposition to civil rights legislation. This contentious relationship with Congress was a defining feature of Johnson's presidency. The Republican-controlled Congress saw Johnson as an obstacle to their efforts to reconstruct the South and protect the rights of African Americans. Johnson, in turn, saw Congress as overstepping their bounds and infringing on his presidential powers. Despite these challenges, Johnson did make some significant contributions during his presidency. He oversaw the ratification of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States and guaranteed equal protection under the law. He also worked to establish the first federal department dedicated to education and oversaw the purchase of Alaska from Russia. Overall, Johnson's presidency was marked by controversy and conflict, as he struggled to balance the competing interests of Reconstruction and racial justice with the preservation of white supremacy and presidential power. Andrew Johnson's impeachment was a dramatic and historic event that arose from his contentious relationship with Congress over Reconstruction and civil rights. The events leading up to his impeachment centered around his removal of Secretary of War Edwin Stanton in 1868. Johnson had been at odds with Stanton for some time, as Stanton was aligned with the Republican-controlled Congress and Johnson saw him as an obstacle to his own policies. In 1867, Congress passed the Tenure of Office Act, which required Senate approval for the removal of certain high-ranking officials, including Stanton. Despite the Tenure of Office Act, Johnson removed Stanton from his position in February 1868 and replaced him with Lorenzo Thomas. Congress responded swiftly, voting to impeach Johnson on the grounds of violating the Tenure of Office Act and abusing his presidential powers. The impeachment process began in the House of Representatives, where Johnson was charged with high crimes and misdemeanors. After a lengthy and contentious trial, the House voted to impeach Johnson and send the case to the Senate for trial. The Senate trial lasted for several months, with both sides presenting arguments and evidence. Ultimately, Johnson was acquitted by a single vote, with 35 senators voting for conviction and 19 voting for acquittal. The one-vote difference was due to the decision of 7 Republicans who chose to vote for acquittal, citing concerns about the constitutionality of the Tenure of Office Act and the precedent that would be set by removing a president from office. The lasting impact of Johnson's impeachment on the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches of government was significant. The impeachment trial established the precedent that the president could be held accountable for his actions and that the power of Congress to check the executive branch was not unlimited. It also solidified the principle that impeachment was a rare and serious remedy to be used only in cases of egregious misconduct. Despite his acquittal, Johnson's presidency was forever marked by the impeachment trial and the controversy surrounding his removal of Stanton. Today, Johnson is remembered as a divisive and controversial figure who left a complex legacy on American history. Andrew Johnson's legacy is a complex one, reflecting the contradictions and tensions of his presidency. While he is often remembered for his impeachment and his contentious relationship with Congress, Johnson also made significant contributions to American history. One of Johnson's most important legacies was his role in preserving the Union during the tumultuous period of Reconstruction following the Civil War. Despite his opposition to many of the civil rights measures passed by Congress, Johnson remained committed to the Union and worked to restore the Southern states to the Union fold. Johnson's mixed record on civil rights, however, remains a subject of debate among historians and scholars. While he did ratify the 14th Amendment, which granted citizenship and equal protection under the law to African Americans, he also opposed efforts to grant suffrage and other civil rights to black citizens. Johnson's veto of the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which sought to protect the rights of African Americans in the wake of the Civil War, was a major point of contention between the president and Congress. Johnson's presidency also foreshadowed later conflicts between the president and Congress over the scope and limits of executive power. His defiance of Congress and his dismissal of the Tenure of Office Act set the stage for later debates over presidential impeachment and the role of the executive branch in American governance. Perhaps most controversially, Johnson's legacy is clouded by his views on race and his opposition to the rights of African Americans. Johnson was a staunch defender of white supremacy and saw Reconstruction as a threat to the established social order. His opposition to civil rights legislation and his support for the South's Redeemer governments, which sought to undo the gains of Reconstruction and reinstate white supremacy, continue to be sources of controversy and debate. In recent years, there has been renewed attention to Johnson's legacy and his place in American history. Some have argued that his presidency was a turning point in the struggle for civil rights and a precursor to later struggles for racial justice. Others see him as a deeply flawed and problematic figure whose legacy is inseparable from his support for white supremacy and his opposition to equal rights for African Americans. Ultimately, Andrew Johnson's legacy is a complicated and contested one, reflecting the deep divisions and tensions that characterized his presidency and the tumultuous period of American history in which he lived. In conclusion, we have explored the life and legacy of Andrew Johnson, the 17th President of the United States. From his humble beginnings as a tailor to his contentious presidency, Johnson's story is one of contradictions and tensions, reflecting the complex and tumultuous period of American history in which he lived. We have seen how his presidency foreshadowed later conflicts between the president and Congress, and how his mixed record on civil rights remains a subject of debate and controversy. As we continue to grapple with the legacies of our past, it is important to remember that the history of the United States is not just the history of its most famous presidents, but also the history of its lesser-known and often overlooked leaders. By continuing to learn about figures like Andrew Johnson and the complexities of their legacies, we can gain a deeper understanding of the challenges and opportunities that have shaped our nation. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it informative, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this in the future.